call to the honourable member for Canning.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that so much of standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent the member for Canning from moving the following motion immediately: that this House reaffirms Israel's inherent right to self-defence, whether attacked by Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran or any other sponsor of terrorism.
Member for Canning.
Mr Speaker, in November of last year, the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security was approached by Israel's ambassador, Mr Amir Maimon. And Mr Maimon asked us if we would be willing to watch the 43-minute video or compilation of video that documented in very clear and brutal imagery Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th. I was joined on the coalition side by Senator Patterson, Senator Birmingham, the member for Flinders and the member for Fisher, and it was an extraordinary and excruciating 43-minute video. One of the most brutal things I've ever seen in my previous career. I've seen quite a few videos relating to ISIS and other terrorists. We watched it because we thought it was important to stare evil in the eyes and understand exactly what transpired on that day back in October 7th. And it was very clear that this was religiously motivated violence against the Jewish people. It was militant Islamism, and it was very distressing to watch, very distressing indeed. We all left very moved and troubled by what we saw. But there was no surprises on that video because many of us have engaged with the Hamas Charter of 2017, which in very clear and plain English documents exactly what the objectives of Hamas are, and that is to destroy the Jewish people and wipe out the State of Israel. And their main method for doing so is violence. Violence is the means of expelling the Jewish people from Israel and destroying Israel itself. Now, last year, soon after the attacks, both chambers of the House, both chambers of this Parliament passed a motion unequivocally condemning the terrorist attacks of 7th October on Israel by Hamas, including the targeting, the murder and the rape of many innocent women and children, and the taking of hostages and indiscriminate rocket fire. And these attacks, Deputy Speaker, resulted in the biggest loss of Jewish life on a single day since the Holocaust. And Hamas still holds around 120 hostages captive. 120 captives who need to be freed, who desperately need to be reunited with their families and who desperately need medical care. But Hamas continues to hold and hide those hostages, just as it hides its terrorist militias and terrorist military equipment among Palestinian civilians and civilian infrastructure, increasing the tragic toll on innocent Palestinian people. Hamas and its supporters in Hezbollah continue to fire rockets indiscriminately at Israel, seeking to inflict maximum pain, death and damage on Israel's civilians and soldiers alike. And they and their supporters, and I'm talking about Hezbollah now, in Iran, continue to call for the death of all Jews and for Israel's destructions. In our bipartisan motion last October, Australia's Chambers of Parliament resolutely made clear that we stand with Israel and recognise its inherent right to defend itself. We acknowledged the devastating loss of Israeli and Palestinian life and that innocent civilians on all sides are suffering as a result of the attacks by Hamas and the subsequent conflict. We don't want to see violence and death and destruction. We want peace. But Hamas started this, and Hamas continues this by refusing to release the hostages, surrender, lay down its arms and cease to be a movement. This remains the position of the coalition, and we should never lose sight of the provocative action on October 7th that started this war. It was Hamas that started this war. It is not a legitimate political force, and it should not have a seat at the negotiating table. But now Hezbollah masses at the border to Israel's north. Israel has had to deal not only with Hamas since October 7th, but also a steady barrage of rockets and missiles from Hezbollah to its north. And our bipartisan motion made clear that Israel has the inherent right to defend itself, not just against Hamas, but also Hezbollah. Hezbollah is Iran's cat's paw in Lebanon. And like Hamas, they are a listed terrorist organisation under Australia law, and they're backed by the Iranian regime. Its motto is death to Israel. And for those of you who doubt what I say, I'm reading from the 1985 Hezbollah Manifesto, which says, "For the sake of the truth, we declare that the sons of Hezbollah's nation have come to know well their basic enemies in the area, Israel, America, France and the Phalange. Our sons are now in a state of ever-escalating confrontation against these enemies until the following objectives are achieved: Israel's final departure from Lebanon as a prelude to its final obliteration from existence, and the liberation of venerable Jerusalem from the talons of occupation." These people are committed to violence. They are committed to the destruction of Israel. We need to be very, very clear about that. It has launched guided rockets and artillery on October 8 last year and daily since then, and tens of thousands of Israelis have been displaced for months, unable to return to their homes, which are targeted every day by terrorists. Experts have assessed Hezbollah as having a stockpile of 120,000 to 200,000 short-range guided ballistic missiles, short and intermediate-range unguided ballistic missiles, and short and long-range unguided rockets. These people are armed to the teeth and they want to destroy Israel and the Jewish people. Hezbollah has and continues to violate UN Security Council Resolution 1701 of August 2006 by deploying forces and firing anti-tank guided missiles and other weapons against Israel from the zone between the Blue Line and the Litani River, an area the United Nations Security Council agreed should be an area free of any armed personnel, assets and weapons other than those of the government of Lebanon and UN forces. Now, we all wish to see, as this parliament made clear after October 7th, the end to the war in the Middle East that was started by Hamas on the 7th of October. This war could end tomorrow if Hamas surrendered, released the hostages and laid down its arms. And this parliament stood resolutely behind Israel's right to self-defence against Hamas last year. And the government should make clear whether it still upholds Israel's right to self-defence against the murderous terrorism of Hezbollah and its supporters. Because, very distressingly, we've read overnight in the Herald Sun in an article written by James Campbell, and I quote, "Israeli Ambassador Amir Maimon was formally summoned to a meeting in Canberra 10 days ago and warned that the Jewish state could not expect Australia's support if it goes to war against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon." In a sign of the deteriorating relationship between Australia and Israel, the federal government's position on a potential war in southern Lebanon was not delivered by Foreign Minister Penny Wong, but was left to Ms Wong's underling, Assistant Minister Tim Watts. It also goes on to say that Mr Maimon's relationship with the Foreign Minister has been in the freezer for several months, and summoning him, that is the Israeli ambassador, to this House can be interpreted as a formal rebuke. Now, the government needs to make very clear and reaffirm its position on Israel and whether or not indeed it supports its inherent right to self-defence. It needs to come clean on the status of its support for Israel, which has repeatedly shifted and weakened despite terrorist groups still holding Israeli citizens hostages and continuing to seek the destruction of Israel. And if this meeting did take place as reported, then Anthony Albanese, or the Prime Minister I should say, and the Foreign Minister need to explain why they didn't front up to tell Israel themselves and why they sent the Assistant Foreign Minister. We on this side believe that Israel has an inherent right to self-defence. Absolutely, unequivocally, Israel has the right to self-defence. And we go back to the United Nations Charter, Article 51, which says nothing in the present Charter shall impair the inherent right of an individual or collective self-defence if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations. Israel has sustained countless armed attacks since October 7th from both Hamas and Hezbollah, which is why this meeting 10 days ago is so troubling. Why is the government shifting its position on this very basic and fundamental right of every nation to self-defence? This is a weak government which is weak on self-defence, and they are weakening their position with one of our closest and most long-term democratic partners and allies in the Middle East. In fact, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. We have many people links. We have many military ties. We have many political ties. This is inexplicable, and the Prime Minister needs to come to this chamber, the Foreign Minister needs to go to the Senate and explain why they have taken such a weak position with regards to Israel's self-defence. It's actually shameful if true, and they need to come clean and explain their position.
Is the motion seconded?